Hello, thank you very much for joining us for yet another edition of our program and your program on Amoge Radio Communications. I am your host, Tolu Modara, welcoming you very warmly to yet another edition of our program on developing artificial intelligence policies. Right now, we are looking at nations, right? You know that if you've been following us, we have been on artificial intelligence implementation. Last quarter we looked at implementing artificial intelligence in organizations and nations. For this particular quarter, we felt the need to focus on, developing or implementing artificial intelligence, effectively in nations, right? Implementing artificial intelligence, effectively, in nations. And that has been the thrust of this particular program for this quarter. First of all, happy new month. How are you doing? I hope your month of August has been off to a beautiful beginning. And it is worth noting that, like we always encourage you to do in Amogate, it's important to continue to evaluate, because just like that, this again is the second month of the third quarter, right? It was shortly the beginning of the quarter. Now we are already in the second month of the quarter, right? So this quarter, we've been looking at what are the things that we need to do to implement artificial intelligence optimally in nations, right? And the need to focus on nations is stronger like never before, because as we are seeing from organizations to organization, even the very top organizations, some that are worth $1 trillion, we are seeing that the effectiveness or otherwise of the artificial intelligence policies at the national level is beginning to impact the outcomes, right? The productivity, the profitability, the revenue, the growth, and so on of those organizations. So ultimately, it is still about what we do in nations. What we do in nations continues to have a significant impact on organizations, even in the private sector. And that's why this particular quarter, we felt the need to focus on artificial intelligence policies in nations and implementing artificial intelligence effectively in nations, right? And so, like we always do in our programs, we are going to try to do a quick recap, right, of some of the things that we discussed in our episode last week, right? For those who are yet to subscribe, like we always say, please subscribe to our YouTube page, Amoge Radio Communications. Invite your team members to, invite your subordinates to, in fact, invite your leaders to, right? Your managers to, your bosses, kind of coach, those that are ahead of you, because honestly, there is a wealth of information, a barrage, a positive barrage in this context of information on Amoge Radio Communications across different programs, from strategy to geopolitics to policy to strategic human resource management, and so on and so forth. So this week, we'll continue on our program, navigating the nuances of AI implementation in nation. Again, we'll continue our program, navigating the nuances of artificial intelligence implementation in nations. So one of the things we tried to do last week was to look at the impact of artificial intelligence on defense in nations, right? How do we want to navigate the nuances of artificial intelligence in defense in nations? What kind of impact has AI been having on defense, right? Not just in terms of the effectiveness, also in terms of the responsiveness, right? As well as the cost efficiency and so on and so forth. What kind of tools are we having in wars, from the American-Iran war to the Russia-Ukraine war and other proxy wars, right? What kind of impact has AI had on these tools, right? How has it impacted the cost of wars? How has it also impacted the effectiveness of wars? How has it impacted the responsiveness of nations? And what happens to you as a nation if you're not getting ready for a world in which artificial intelligence is playing a critical role in defense in the nations? We're not going to go over the same thing the things that we discussed last week, and that's why we're inviting you to subscribe to Ready Communication. Please catch up on the things we discussed. There's a lot you have to learn as policymakers and even as defense players. Some of us are not necessarily policymakers, but private sector players in the defense industry, right? And these things are very, very, very important to us, right? But this week we are going to look at something else, right? We're not going to look at defense this week. This week we are going to look at how exactly we want to develop effective AI policies in nations if we don't have an unbiased evidence base. I'm going to say that again. This week, we are going to look at developing effective AI policies in nations, the need for an unbiased evidence base. I'm going to say that again. Developing effective artificial intelligence policies in nations, the need for an unbiased evidence base. And this week we're going to look at two segments. We're going to look at academia, and we're also going to look at the public sector, especially those responsible for, influencing policy making, right? Developing effective artificial intelligence policies in nations, the need for an unbiased evidence base. And our concern in Amogate is actually coming from what we've been seeing, right? We've been monitoring from nation to nation, and we're seeing that a number of nations are concerned about the ability of those playing in the artificial intelligence sector, in the artificial intelligence industry, particularly the private sector, to quote and unquote, rule over those who should be providing an unbiased evidence base, right? Unfortunately, and I'm going to use the word unfortunately in quotes, unfortunately, across nations, the academia those who work in academia tend not to be remunerated in terms of monetary rewards. They tend not to be remunerated in a manner that makes it easy for them to fend off the attempts of the private sector players in artificial intelligence to rule them over. So there have been concerns from nations to nation about the ability of the AI players, AI private sector players, to rule over those who used to be able to provide unbiased perspectives, unbiased evidence-based perspectives that should influence policy making. And it's gotten to the point where we feel that it's important for nations to build, like we were saying last week, to build, institutes and centers where you remunerate, to be honest, in a manner that makes it easier for them to fend off those attempts. When I say for them, for the scholars, for those who are, in the academic sector, for those who are in the research sector, and so on and so forth, to remunerate in such a way that we can still trust the evidence that they would be providing. Because what's happening generally is that, one, the big players in the private sector, the big AI players now in the private sector, are weighing those who used to provide a very, objective evidence basis from which governments and nations could, draw inferences for policy making. They are now weighing them over in such a manner that the question is, how do we trust the evidence that such people are now providing? That's number one. And number two, the concern is also growing that even for those that they have not ruled over, they are, they are, quote unquote, they are dangling money around so much that even those who are yet to leave this, for instance, this research institution, the question is now being asked that how do we know that they are not carrying on in a manner that they are more or less like positioning themselves to move. So there are two categories of people. There are those who have already been wooed. There are the researchers who have already been wooed by the private sector players. And number two, there are the researchers who are yet to be wooed, but there's a concern, right? There's a concern by those who are still independent-minded that these people are being tempted to more or less position themselves for the highest bidder. So generally, unfortunately, the public, which is already having, trust issues in the artificial intelligence sector, is also likely to trust the evidence being coming from a sector that should have been, worthy of their trust. Right now, there is concern, and we are not just talking about the problems like we always do on Amway Radio Communications. We are also preferring solutions. Now, interestingly, this is a solution that we had also referenced last week when we're talking about the need for nations to prepare to integrate artificial intelligence more into their defense sector. We had talked about the need for nations not to leave the private sector alone, that nations need to invest in, centers for research, artificial intelligence research, where they should gather evidence on, for instance, AI adoption. They should gather evidence on adaptability of, within the context of last week, adaptability of their defense departments or ministries of defense, and their military bases and so on and so forth, to those tools. And we said it was important for nations to invest in those research institutions, in those centers. And we also emphasize the need for nations not to leave this to the private sector only, because if you leave it to the private sector only, there'll be so much control. We had said that even last week, but between last week and this week, what we have seen is that there is even more concern. There's growing concern that even beyond the context of defense, generally speaking, there is the need to ensure that the research outputs can be trusted. And that means that the private sector must be matched, quote unquote. This is our honest view, and you know what's on our radio communications, we are going to share our honest thoughts. Our honest thoughts is that this is one area in which nations need to fund research in a competitive manner. I need to say that again. One of our honest recommendations is that this is one area, if nations are going to manage to preserve what is left of the public trust in AI. Remember, we have discussed it in our predecessor programs to this program, that the public is having an issue with the trust. And that's why there's a lot of fight against things like data centers and so on and so forth. We're not going to go over the things you've already stated in predecessor programs. Please go to Amway Radio Communications and you see some of our predecessor programs. But generally, it's been established that the public is having an issue with trusting artificial intelligence players. We talked about the need to democratize the benefits of artificial intelligence as a way of dealing with this trust issue. So already there's a trust issue. Unfortunately, as things stand, if the academic base, right, if the research base is also being, if the objectivity of the research base is also being threatened, the trust can only go down. And I'm going to say that again. Unfortunately, if an emerging sector like the artificial intelligence sector that is already having challenges with trust issues, right, the public trust, if the research supporting artificial intelligence, the research that should be, informing artificial intelligence policies, is now being questioned, if the objectivity of the research is being questioned, it can only have, unfortunately, negative impact for, further dampen the public trust. And one of the ways the government needs to deal with this, as far as we are concerned, one of the ways in which the government of nations needs to deal with this is to match them remuneration for remuneration. This is one area where you can't say, this is our honest take on this. This is one area where, as nations, as public sector, institutions. We can't say, well, if you're going to work in the public sector, then you just have to have a passion for nation building. Guess what? Passion does not pay the bills. And the impact of artificial intelligence confidence, the nose diving has been already demonstrably negative. I'll give you a simple example. The stock prices of a number of tech firms is already going down. I think last week the stock price of Meta was seen to have gone down. That of Microsoft was seen to have been impacted so much so that even Satya Nadella's legacy is being threatened. Satya Nadella, by the way, is the CEO of Microsoft, and he has done a good job thus far onto the issue of artificial intelligence. So the impact of the loss of public trust in artificial intelligence is negative even on the private sector players. But it's not up to the private sector players to fix this issue. It is up to public sector institutions to fix issue because they are responsible. They have the authority, they have government, they have the responsibility. So they are going to have to wake up and do something about it. They are going to have to wake up and take responsibility to fix this issue. And one of the ways in which they have to do this, to be very honest, from our own position in Amogate, we strongly believe that they need to begin to review the remuneration of those who are likely to be wooed by the private sector players, by the AI private sector players, right? The researchers who are likely to be wooed, and to match them remuneration match the private sector remuneration for remuneration, and as much as possible retain these talents, retain these researchers. This is one area where we don't want the researchers going to the highest bidders, otherwise the chain of possession is already clear. It's already clearly indicated that is going to have a further negative impact on public trust. And the lack of public trust, or the waning public trust, the damping public trust in artificial intelligence is going to also have a consequent negative effect on the ability of artificial intelligence to do more good than evil, right? Artificial intelligence, like we've always said, is neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. What is important is that we need to ensure that we have policies that guarantee that artificial intelligence is made to serve man rather than have man serve artificial intelligence, to paraphrase the words of the United Nations Secretary General. Well, my name is still Tolu Obadara. This is Amogate Communications, and this is your program. This is our program, navigating the nuances of AI implementation in nations. Again, this is your program, navigating the nuances of AI implementation in nations. And this week, our topic is developing effective AI policies in nations, the need to maintain an unbiased evidence base, the need for an unbiased evidence base. We'll take a quick break now and we'll be back shortly. Please stay with us.
At Amogate Training, we believe professional development should do more than inform. It should transform how people work, lead, and deliver results. That's why we support organizations through conceptual insight, practical learning, and performance evaluation right at the intersection of leadership, strategy, and institutional transformation. Our approach focuses on practical learning format that professionals can immediately apply in their workplace. At Amogate, we don't teach theory alone. We equip participants with real-world insight drawn from almost 2 decades of organizational transformation experience. Our programs combine multiple learning methods designed for real-time measurable results. Through seminars, we facilitate deep conversation on key subjects. Using group exercises, participants collaborate, reflect, and think strategically. With case studies, they then sharpened analytical and decision-making skills using real industry scenarios. Through relevant videos, we spark insightful discussions using relatable real-life context. All in all, every participant develops an individual work plan, ensuring the learning turns into real action after the program. Our training programs are hosted in world-class venues across global cities, including Addis Ababa, Nairobi, Mombasa, Cape Town, Dubai, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, London, Florida, and Washington, D.C. Let's work with you to turn learning into your organization's growth. For more inquiries, call +234 807 9574 151 or WhatsApp +1 610 504 6026. Visit www.thearmorgate.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Armorgate. Armorgate Training, transforming knowledge, interaction, and growth.
Welcome back. Welcome back to your program and my program. It's our program, Navigating the Nuances of AI Implementation in Nations here on Armorgate Communications. We're looking at developing effective AI policies in nations that need for an unbiased evidence-based. Now, we're supposed to talk about talent pipeline, right? The talent pipeline, right? Because I've worked a bit with academia, with researchers, with consultants across continents. At least I've worked with some in Europe, I've worked with some in North America, and of course worked with some in Africa, in at least 3 nations. And one thing I can tell you is that the nations that stay responsive are those who continue to build a pipeline of talent, right? Because one thing you also want to ask yourself is that what is the need? This is where we as Armorgate will encourage nations to conduct skills audits, right? You don't want to look at skills that are available alone. You also want to look at the skills that are required. There is definitely a growing need, right? So it's one thing for you to say, okay, you want to do your best to retain talent in the public sector, you want to do your best to retain talent in institutions, to ensure that there is as much as possible an objective evidence basis for influencing artificial intelligence policies. You also have to ask yourself, what do you want to do to replenish the talent pipeline, right? What do you want to do to ensure a steady flow? And that's why one of the things we have been conversing for is the need to have artificial intelligence policy programs, artificial intelligence research institutions that are growing a steady pipeline of researchers, right? So we have to also look at it in very numerical terms. You have to conduct the skills audit in terms of both competencies as well as quantities. How many AI researchers do we need? How many AI scientists do we need? How many AI numerologists do we need? And so on and so forth. It's time for us to begin to identify the skills, define the skills. Remember what we've been saying, that artificial intelligence is not just taking away jobs, it's also creating new jobs. The question is, are we providing enough skills to ensure that the new jobs have the people? We don't want a structural unemployment here. We don't want a situation where the people are not are able to meet the needs of the new jobs being created, right? This is something that I know that America is looking at, and different nations also have to be looking at it. How do we ensure that we are, as much as possible, bridging the skills gap? Obviously, there's a skills gap between the jobs that used to exist and the jobs that are now emerging. Artificial intelligence has taken a number of jobs, no doubt, right? It's taking away the jobs that are easily automatable, but the fact remains that nations are still finding out that certain jobs that require high-level critical thinking are hard to replace. Now, the question is not whether those jobs are hard to replace or not. The question is, do we have the skills for the emerging jobs, right? And that requires, again, a numerical approach. That requires an evidence-based approach. It's important to define the skills that are needed, the skills that, that emerging jobs are calling for, and to also do some kind of a skills audit across nations. How many of those skills do we have? How many of those skills do we lack? One of the things we've spoken about in our predecessor programs to this is that there is an urgent need to partner with institutions to develop new programs. And I must say, I've been excited by a number of new programs that I've seen. I've seen PhD in artificial science, artificial intelligence, sciences in some nations, a couple in the United States. I've seen, bachelor's program in artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. But this honestly is not yet widespread across nations. Nations need to become much more responsive. We have to create new curriculum, new content, and adapt existing content to the emerging needs, right? This is where we really need to. I remember one time in the United States where I was talking about the need to bridge the town and gown, and I was speaking, I think it was at an offshore wind energy conference, and I was talking about the need to, to bridge the gap between the town and the gown much more to ensure that those programs are being developed, more in rapidity. Those programs that speak to the needs of the private sector, that speak to the needs of industry, that academia is working more in sync, more speedily in sync. Not that they are not working in sync, but they need to work more speedily in sync with industry, such that we are responding to the need to create a fresh and continuously flowing talent pipeline. Well, this is still your host, Tolu Omodara, here on our Communications. We're looking at the nuances of artificial intelligence, right? The nuances of artificial intelligence implementation in nations. How do we navigate the nuances of artificial intelligence implementation in nations? Today, we have been looking specifically at developing effective AI policies in nations, the need for an unbiased evidence base, right? We've talked about the need to do our best as nations, as public sector institutions, to retain the talent. Now we are talking about the need to also replenish the talent pipeline, because whether we like it or not, demographic factors are also going to impact the talent. Some are going to, grow old, but they're going to grow older, right? And much as we can, leverage the wisdom of the old, we also need to unleash the energy of the young. So we also need to ensure that continuous talent pipeline so that we can have greater generational synergy. And that brings me to my third and I think last recommendation for today. We also need to create more and more AI mentoring programs, right? Specifically those that would help to accelerate the development of the young, right? Much as we're trying to retain the old, and we're also trying to, create a new pipeline, a new talent pipeline, or expand the new talent pipeline. We also have to ensure greater intergenerational synergy. I've seen a number of professors in the United States, especially those that are really, really intelligent, really, I'm not saying all professors are intelligent, but I've seen some that they want to describe as geniuses. They tend to want to retire early. I've seen a number of them, and when I see them retiring, I'm almost grieved, but I can also understand if they've been doing this for. Remember, there are many, when I'm talking about those who I want to describe as geniuses, so they've probably been doing this pretty early because they are probably prodigies, right? Maybe they were child prodigies early in their years, so maybe they started very, very much earlier than the average age. So after a while, they also tend to want to retire. I've seen a number of them leave, and I feel, oh my God, why we are losing talent here. Now, it's okay. It's okay for them to want to retire, but what do we want to do before they retire? And what do we want to do even after they retire? I've also seen a number of precious talent, who can work in this kind of institutions that can help to provide an unbiased evidence base for artificial intelligence policy making. I've seen a number of them living also in nations like Nigeria. Now, it's okay for them to retire if they've worked for decades, right? But what do we want to do to leverage their expertise, their experience, their insights, even after they have retired? I think that we can create intergenerational synergy here. I think we can create flexible working, models, right, that continue to leverage their expertise even after they have retired. Like I said, this is one area where we really, really need to match the private sector. When I say we, where nations, I'm talking to nations here, where nations really need to match the private sector remuneration for remuneration. And remember, total rewards package is more than financial compensation. It also includes the kind of work, work structures, flexible work models, flexible hybrid, remote, and so on and so forth, work structures that they create to make it more desirable for them. These are the things that these researchers are being ruled with. It's not just the financial compensation. So we also have to think about it. How do we create these flexible work models that make it easier for us to retain, at least as flexibly as possible, those who would ordinarily want to migrate from the public sector, because they are honestly tired, because they've worked for decades Sometimes they've also been under-remunerated, and they are now leaving for the private sector. And guess what? Those private sector organizations have a stake in subjectivity, not objectivity. But then it's important sometimes that these researchers, provide a skewed SKEWED, a skewed, perspective. And the more this happens, the further the public will lose trust in the kind of evidence that is informing artificial intelligence policy, right? The big AI companies have already been said to be, raiding the economics, philosophy, and public policy academic departments of leading universities, even in the United States. This is happening. They are on the quote unquote on the attack, and they have the finances to do this. And so people are concerned, like, what's going to happen? What's going to be the socio-economic effects of this? This question is being asked, right? Since the month of May, it's been said that Google and Anthropic have poached like 3 top economists from Stanford University and University of Chicago and Virginia. And these are people who have pioneered research on the economic impacts of advanced artificial intelligence. So if the big AI companies have gone after them with their millions, with their stock options, what are they going to do? Do you want to then begin to research against your own employer? So these are concerns. These are very valid concerns. And I dare say it's not just happening in the United States, it's happening in other nations too. So governments, public sector institutions have to honestly get on the offensive too. They have to begin to match this private sector organization compensation for compensation. Otherwise, the public trust in artificial intelligence is going to further slide. Remember, there is already concern about whether artificial intelligence is serving the everyday citizen. And that's why there's been a lot of kickback against artificial intelligence projects like data centers. So we don't want the public to further lose trust, because they are now doubting the kind of recommendations that will be coming from such researchers that have more or less been bought over by the big private sector players. So it's not to the benefit of anyone for government and public sector institutions to fold their arms while the big private sector players continue to poach these top researchers and hence continue to bring further distrust to the evidence base and the kind of policies that will come from such researchers. Well, I think this is where I'm going to draw a curtain on today's edition of the program. Again, today we are looking at developing effective AI policies in nations, the need for an unbiased evidence base, right? We've tried to explore the problem. I was also trying to propose 3 solutions. Number 1, it's important to match the private sector organizations remuneration for remuneration, right? This is not one instance where you want to hold on to your old remuneration models. Your total reward packages must be flexible, must be responsive, because you have to see the chain of causation. If you can't retain this talent, if they are wooed over by the likes of Google and Anthropic, and they are poaching these top economists who are supposed to be, providing evidence-based to inform policies on the economic impact of advanced AI, if they are poaching them, then obviously the people are going to further mistrust in artificial intelligence, and they are going to kick back even more, and it's not going to be for the benefit of humanity. So 1, you want to try some public sector institutions may need to seriously consider matching these private sector organizations compensation for compensation, so that way they create an incentive for these researchers to remain with the public sector institutions or the academic institutions. But 2, we also want to begin to create a pipeline of fresh talent, right? Expand the pipeline of fresh talent. And number 3, we want to look at ways of creating intergenerational synergy between the older and the younger, especially through flexible work programs that we can use to bring back some of those who have retired or those who are considering retiring, some of the researchers who have either retired or considering retiring. If we can introduce more flexible work models, hopefully we'll be able to bring more intergenerational synergy by having them mentor and collaborate with the younger ones. Well, this is where we are going to draw a curtain on today's edition of the program. I've been your host, Oromadara, here on Amoge Radio Communications, and this has been your program navigating nuances of artificial implementation in nations. Right, today we have been looking at the need to maintain the objectivity of the evidence base, right? Developing effective AI policies in nations, the need for an unbiased evidence base. So we're back same time, same station next week. Until then, remember, we look forward to hearing back from you. You are the reason why we do this. Please send us an email, contact@theamogate.org, or you can reach us through our contact forms on our LinkedIn page, on our website, www.theamogate.org. It's very important to us to hear back from you. You are the reason why we do these affirmations or institutions who may want us to work with them, for instance, of conducting manpower audits and so on and so forth. We are very much willing and able to do this with you. Thank you so much again. Remember, there'll be other programs on Tuesday through Friday, and it's like coming every same time, same station next week. Remember, we have to take objectivity and the evidence base that informs our AI policies. Thank you so much, and see you next week. Have a good one.
Harmogate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Harmogate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent that will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. We are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@thearmogate.org or call +234 810 999 6666, +234 807 957 4151, and +161 0504 6026. www.thearmogate.org. Armogate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.